Welcome to today's Explainer. If you just glanced at the headlines today, August 13th, 2026, it all looks a bit chaotic, right? You've got a tense naval standoff in the Middle East, a massive tech market boom, and some truly extreme weather rolling across the US. But as we're going to see today, these aren't just isolated events. They're actually writing one single highly interconnected story about what happens when our wild digital ambitions crash right into our physical reality. It's a lot to wrap our heads around, so let's dive right in.
Okay, here is our roadmap for today. 1. Global blockades and energy. 2. The AI boom and market reality. 3. Extreme weather and health. And finally, 4. Economy, work, and culture.
Let's kick things off with Section 1, Global Blockades and Energy, Geopolitics at the Choke Point.
Right now, global energy markets are basically being held hostage by high-stakes naval standoffs at some of the world's most critical choke points. We're looking at a complete clash of claims over the Strait of Hormuz. On one hand, you have the U.S. strategy under President Trump, which involves an indefinite naval blockade. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is literally calling it a wall of steel, stating the U.S. can just continuously rotate ships in and out without dropping enforcement. But then, on the flip side of this standoff, Iran is flat out insisting its military completely controls the waterway, claiming 0 vessels can pass without Tehran's explicit permission. Nobody is backing down here, and it's causing massive disruptions to how global shipping actually operates.
And that brings us to $88.24. That's exactly where Brent crude settled today. Now, you might be thinking, wait, didn't OPEC and the International Energy Agency just lower their global demand expectations? Shouldn't prices be dropping? Well, normally, yeah. But this persistent tension in the Middle East, combined with a recent Houthi drone attack on Saudi Aramco's Jazan refinery, has just put a rock-solid floor under these prices. It's gotten so tense that Saudi tankers are actively disabling their tracking signals and altering routes just to survive the trip. So this geopolitical friction is directly inflating the cost of the physical resources that literally power our daily lives.
Moving on to Section 2, AI boom and market reality, the cost of digital perfection. So, pivoting away from those physical choke points, let's look at the digital economy, where tech and semiconductor shares actually just pushed the S&P 500 to another intraday record. But here's the catch. The market's reaction is super fractured right now. Investors are basically demanding digital perfection. They are heavily rewarding companies providing the physical hardware to make AI happen. I mean, look at SanDisk, up 15%, and Micron, up 5.6%. But then you have Cisco, which dropped 9%. Even with a really favorable revenue forecast. Why? Because the market is incredibly anxious about the immense networking costs required to actually build this AI reality. Just having strong demand doesn't guarantee a stock bump anymore if the expectations are already priced at absolute perfection.
And honestly, those costs are astronomical because the physical footprint of AI is just staggering. We talk about it living in the cloud, but AI requires metal, it requires land, and it requires a ridiculous amount of power. Look at Foxconn. They just reported a massive 35% profit jump, totally driven by new AI server racks like the NVIDIA Vera Rubin system. CoreWeave is bumping up its capital spending, and NVIDIA is literally proposing a mind-blowing $500 billion financing collaboration just for data centers, $500 billion. And it's bleeding into traditional industries too. Even Ryanair is now using Google's Gemini AI, not just for basic tasks, but to manage critical flight crew scheduling. The digital world is absolutely devouring physical resources.
So, while the markets are completely fixated on pricing in this digital perfection and funding $500 billion data centers, we have to ask ourselves, what is actually happening out there in the real physical environment today?
That brings us to Section 3, Extreme Weather and Health, Nature's Reality Check.
Take a look at this number, 20 inches. That's the amount of isolated rainfall Tropical Storm Lala could potentially dump on Hawaii's Big Island, which is currently sitting under a hurricane watch. Lala is packing 40-mile-per-hour winds and tracking westward. If they actually get hit with those 20 inches, we are talking severe flash flooding, landslides, and totally inaccessible roads. Emergency managers are scrambling as we speak to ensure people have backup power and medication. It's a stark reminder that for all our technological advancements, a single storm system can still just stop us in our tracks.
And Hawaii is definitely not an isolated case. Just look at the compounding environmental threats hitting the U.S. mainland today. We've got Saharan dust that has somehow traveled over 4,000 miles from Africa to completely choke the air quality across Texas and the Gulf Coast. 4,000 miles. At the same time, dangerous compounding heat waves are baking the central and southern plains, while the Midwest and Ohio Valley are dealing with major flooding risks.
All of this is happening right on the heels of July 2026, which went down as the hottest month in contiguous U.S. history. Our power grids, the exact same grids we desperately need to run those massive new AI data centers, are under incredible stress from the atmosphere.
Now, stack a highly strained public health system right on top of that environmental stress. As emergency crews are out there prepping for storms and heat, the U.S. is simultaneously dealing with its highest annual measles total in decades, mostly among unvaccinated populations. And if that wasn't enough, federal investigators are currently tracing a fatal cyclosporiosis outbreak linked to contaminated lettuce. It's already hit 15 states and tragically caused 2 deaths. When you start layering active disease outbreaks over extreme weather events, the logistical strain on our infrastructure becomes incredibly complex.
Let's head into our final part, Section 4, Economy, Work, and Culture, Adapting to the Shift. We're really seeing this societal tension play out in real time down in Washington over autonomous vehicles. As AI leaves the server rack and actually hits the physical street, the policy debate is getting intense. On one side, supporters are pushing hard for federal standards to replace a messy patchwork of inconsistent state laws, hoping to fast-track the rollout of self-driving tech. But critics are pushing back just as hard. They're demanding strict safety reporting, liability rules, and, crucially, labor protections. You've got truck drivers and unions who are, understandably, deeply concerned about what this means for human employment. It's the ultimate friction point, right? The sheer speed of digital innovation clashing with the everyday reality of human livelihoods.
Culturally, we're also seeing some fascinating shifts in how our institutions reflect political authority. Case in point, the Kennedy Center Board just voted to add an inscription with President Trump's name back to the building's exterior. This is a pretty significant governance decision for one of the country's most prominent cultural institutions, and considering it follows a previous federal judge's order to have the name removed, this vote could easily reignite a notable legal dispute over the building's identity and its facade. It just goes to show that right alongside these massive technological and environmental shifts, our cultural and political symbols are still a major focal point of public interest.
So when you pull all of these different threads together, the naval blockades, the massive AI server farms, the hurricanes, the debates over autonomous trucks, it really all boils down to one core reality, captured perfectly in this quote. Operational reliability and financial performance must now match the industry's technical ambition. Look, we have the ambition to build $500 billion AI infrastructure and automate global supply chains, absolutely. But whether we're trying to safely route an oil tanker past a drone strike or just trying to keep the lights on in a hospital during a 20-inch downpour, our technical dreams are really only as good as our physical, operational reliability.
And that brings us to our final thought for today's explainer. We are pushing the absolute boundaries of what is technologically possible at the exact same moment that the physical world, through geopolitics and extreme weather, is pushing back harder than ever. So I want to leave you with this. As technology races forward and the physical world pushes back, is our infrastructure resilient enough to bridge the gap? Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the connections around you.